2, 1, go.
And without further ado, he's one of the most prominent activists leading his country. He's a man who's not afraid to speak up for the voiceless and stand firm on his beliefs. He's the soul reacher, the liberation seeker, and he is a true teacher. He's back from the historic weekend, having played a major role in the commemoration of the killing of Mike Brown. He's the president and founder of the National Action Network and has devoted his life to helping our people. He's none other than the Reverend Dr. Al Sharpton. No justice,
no peace.
no justice,
No peace.
no justice,
No peace.
no justice.
No peace.
What do we want?
Justice.
What do we want?
Justice.
What do we want?
Justice.
When do we want it?
Now.
When do we want it?
Now.
When do we want it?
Now.
Hug the person next to you, tell them you love them. Network Change Choir. Give them a hand. Give them a big hand. Certainly we're happy to be with you another Saturday morning for the Saturday Action Rallies. For you that are listening and you that are present here at the House of Justice, 106 West 145th Street in the village of Harlem. And for you that are listening live on 1190 WLIB, 1190 AM live in New York, and you that are watching live stream around the country, we are happy to be with you another Saturday morning where the action is. Give a hand to our Northeast Regional Director, Minister Kirsten John Ford. Young man leading the Northeast region of NAN, hosting today as Attorney Hardy is on travel. And we're glad for all that have participated in the program. Got a lot to cover in a little bit of time. Let me thank again, Minister Ford and Dominique and others that conducted the panel last week in my absence. I only missed 2 or 3 Saturdays a year, but I had to be in Ferguson last Saturday, and Esau Gardner and I were there for the kickoff of the weekend for the first anniversary of the shooting death of Michael Brown by police in Ferguson. Esau stayed the entire weekend with the Brown family to be part of their march and memorial. I went on to LA for 50 years after Watts. And our chapter there, our office there, Minister Reverend Tulis, had a very successful event. Former Mayor Villagrosa and Bishop Noel Jones and a lot of people met us there on Wednesday. So from Ferguson to LA, back here, between 3 time zones, I'm like somewhere between trying to figure out where to set my watch. But I'm glad that one of the things that makes me proud is that wherever we go, we are on the forefront of being active. A lot of folk call themselves things that they don't live up to. If you're a singer, you ought to sing sometime. If you're a writer, you ought to be able to show me what you've written. If you're an activist, you need to be active. So whether it is Ferguson or Charleston or Staten Island, Nan had been involved from the beginning. I tell some of the young folk in LA that part of the youth move of National Action Network in LA, the history of this organization is we would marching and making racial profiling a part of the lexicon before we had videos. Some of y'all had to see a video to believe it. We believed Louima and there wasn't no video. And we were there from day one with Gardner. Some of y'all didn't get mad till the grand jury didn't come back. We was already mad. So we can continue to fight because this is what we do. Let me also say that it is important that you sustain fights. I was talking to Reverend Charles Williams, who heads our Detroit chapter, and they have their Sad Action rally like we do. And I was saying to him this morning that you can train for a 100-yard dash, or you can train for a marathon. If you train for a 100-yard dash and get in a marathon, you're going to get embarrassed. Because after 100 yards, you're going to give out. And a lot of activists end up going more backwards than forward because they think that if you do one demonstration, one march, one go to jail, that you're supposed to win. And then you get mad if that don't work. You got to plan for the long haul. Because your adversary, part of their strategy is they're going to see if they can wait you out. Because they have all the power, so they can wait. They can give you tomorrow's paper. You got to pray for history, not tomorrow's paper. Paper come out every day. I've been on the front page, good and bad. I don't get excited when it's good, and I don't get too sad when it's bad, because another one coming out tomorrow. And your front page gonna be somebody's dog mess tomorrow. Hello. So don't get too excited. Pray for history. Or when it's all over, what they gonna say about you. And that is the goal here. Let me say this, and I want to get into, we have some very special guests I want to share, and then I'm gonna come back and give our message this morning since I was not here last week, because I don't want Kirsten and the young folk to think that we had a coup d'etat in here. But I've been reading, they have the website for the millennials up, the Shift Daily, theshiftdaily.com, and it's beautiful. A lot of people need to read it. I read it 2 or 3 times a day. Ashley, my younger daughter, said to me, "Dad, why you go to the Shift Daily all day?" That's the young folk thing. I said, I read to make sure y'all ain't attacking me. They made it clear I couldn't have no editorial input, me, Hardy, none of us. They control the whole thing. So I'd be checking up on them. Make sure they ain't slipped something funny up in there that I need to get on nationalactionnetwork.net and defend myself. We are in the middle of some very serious and historic crossroads. President Obama painstakingly negotiated an agreement around the nuclear weapons and plans for nuclear weapons in Iran. They met, and over a course of months, they were able to make an agreement with Iran and had 5 other major powers, nations with power, sign on the agreement. The agreement would stall 15 years down the road many of the things Iran had planned. And the agreement gives a 24-day inspection notice at any point. The right wing ever immediately come out and said that they are opposed to it. It gives away too much, that they can hide nuclear waste and, well, nuclear buildup. Every scientist has said it is impossible to hide uranium in that amount of time. You can argue different opinions, but you can't argue facts. There's no way you can hide and kill off uranium inside of 24 days. You can't do that. So as we look at this Iran nuclear pact, that again, the United States is one of 6. The alternative is that now, since the other nations have signed on and Iran has agreed, that if the U.S. Senate and the Congress rejects it, then the only alternative is then that Iran can move forward and say, well then, we came to the table in good faith, we agreed to diplomacy, they said no, so we're going to expedite, and they will be able to go around the world, the Russia and others, and try to now move forward and get this, all that they need to make nuclear weapons. Then the response will be they have to be stopped and let's go to war. Because the world's not going to sit there and let them do that. The reason it is of concern to us more than anyone that is in the discussion is if they go to war, there will be a disproportionate amount of military that comes out of our community. People I know sitting home in the barbershop talking about what red man talking about Iran for, because your son will be the one on the front line. Your daughter will be the one on the way to the Middle East. All these right-wingers sitting up on TV talking, they know their kids will not be the ones that have to fight this war. They've taken millions of dollars to buy ads, and they're rolling out a real affront on the president saying, don't sign the pact. And they're telling the senators and the congressmen that you should not sign this pact. Today, we're starting to drive among our churches to tell the congressmen and senators, we elect you and we want you to vote yes for the Iran nuclear pact. Now, they may have the money that supports your elections, but we have the votes. And they are not going to give you no money if we don't vote to put you in there. So today is about saying to the senators and the congressmen of New York and New Jersey, don't vote against your constituents, no matter how much pressure. We don't want to go to war. We calling on churches to come forward, and tomorrow morning, all over this country, they're organizing in the West Coast, we're organizing out south, Reverend Rivers and all. Every minister ought to call, every minister ought to call on their parishioners to call or email their congressman and tell their congressman and their senator to vote yes on the Iran deal. They need to know we watching this. They think we only watch certain issues. Iran is our issue. It is our children. We have some of the leading clergy leaders that are going to take a couple of minutes apiece in this, and we have some members of the press here in this announcement today. First, we're honored to have the chairman of our board, who has stood not only chairing our board, but chairs the overall denominational gathering, the Congress of Black Churches, that he serves in that capacity, as well as chairs the Board of Trustees for Virginia Union University and pastors the Grace Baptist Church in Mount Vernon. Y'all can tell the press is here because I give all his titles. Otherwise I'd just say, you know, the preacher with no socks sitting up on my platform. I ain't never went to Grace and then wear my socks, but that's a whole... Our chairman, Reverend Dr. W. Franklin Richardson. Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. Some brothers not free enough to wear no socks. But I know he's free because he's a liberator leader. I'm glad to be here this morning. Glad to be here with the president of the National Action Network, who is doing a stellar job for all of us. The National Action Network has evolved to the most significant civil rights organization in the country. And we are proud to be associated with it. And we're grateful. I'm glad to be here this morning. I'm always glad to be in the House of Justice. But this morning, I'm glad to be here to speak with community, with clergy around the nation, and for that matter, around the world, on this Iraq response. I think it's important to separate out issues that are critical. One of the issues is that this has got to be lifted above personality and politics. We know that the right wing does not like the President of the United States. We know that many on the right have done everything they can to block his progress. And we've seen how significantly he has been able to outmaneuver them and still deliver on behalf of the people of this country and the people of the world. When the book is closed, his record will be irrefutable and his accomplishments will be undeniable. But this issue is much larger than whether I like the president or whether I agree with his politics. This issue is about sustaining the global village. It's about how do we take care of human civilization going forward. This issue is about how many times, when have we ever had a war that has ultimately led to accomplishing peace and reconciliation? Every war brings death and cost and casualty. There may be some things achieved, but never have wars justified the toll of life that's taken. And if we can, on the front side, stop war, that's where we ought to be. We ought to be on the front side of stopping war. The Reverend has so correctly stated that it is the children from our communities, children who have gone to the military because it was a reasonable option when they couldn't get a job staying home. Children who have been denied opportunity in our neighborhoods go to the military for a step up so they can go to college, they can maintain for their families. They go to the military because it is an option in a society that has closed doors on African Americans.
Now, for them to go to the military and then have irresponsible policy, put them in the streets and in the corridors and the danger of war, is to flip the chart on them. They thought they were going to get an opportunity, and they ended up giving their lives and being desecrated for those who have power pockets who are continuously sustained by war. We must understand that everybody who's speaking against the Iran policy is not speaking because it's an ideological thing. Many of them have economic motivation. They will make money off of having another war. We've seen that. And if we could have gotten in front of the last administration, maybe we would be better off if we could have stopped Iraq. If we could have stopped going into Iraq. Some of the same people who have driven us into Iraq are now trying to drive us into a war and conflict with Iran. And some of those same people made money off of our engagement in those wars. We need to communicate that we understand. We need to communicate to our congressmen and to our representatives that we understand. We understand global politics. We understand motivations. We understand outcomes. We understand what's at risk. And we will not sit back and allow our Congress representatives to misrepresent us. We want you to represent our best interests. And we're calling on the senators and the congressmen in New Jersey, New York, all in the Northeast where we are clergy are gathered around the country to stop this stalling and get on with some reconciliation that can try to save the planet. God bless you.
Dr. W. Franklin Richardson. On our board, one of the outstanding clergymen of our time. He pastors the Metropolitan Baptist Church in Newark, a church that Senator Cory Booker attends. Not that I would put a lot of pressure on Senator Booker by having his pastor. Y'all know I wouldn't do nothing like that. But he's an outstanding clergyman, member of our national board, and the chairman of New Jersey National Action Network, that's ably directed by Reverend Steffi Bartley, who pastors in, he pastors in Newark as well as in Elizabeth, as well as got the soul food joint in Elizabeth. Let us hear from our own Dr. Reverend David Jefferson Sr.
Good morning, good morning. Let me first of all commend Reverend Sharpton. And I want to say that I am very, very honored to be back in the House of Justice. It is not clear to me why we want to keep going to this movie, knowing what the outcome is going to be. I take this personally because 1965 and 66, I was at Webster High School in Minden, Louisiana. And we were sending young men off to war in Vietnam. And I was afraid that I was going to finish high school, not be able to go to college, and that I was going to get drafted to go to a war. I was an outstanding student. Eddie Robinson Jr. was my football coach. Eddie Robinson Sr. had offered me a scholarship to play football at Grambling State University. And my life hung in the balance as to whether or not I was going to get the opportunity to be able to go to college or they were going to draft me in a war. But there was a preacher in Atlanta, Georgia, by the name of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who stood up and said that the Vietnam War was senseless, it was useless. And he stood up and said that we should not be doing that. As it turned out, Dr. King was right. And then later on, we had a senator out of Illinois who said that the war that we were trying to fight in Iraq was a mistake. And that person is now the President of the United States of America. And what President Obama said has turned out to be correct. We have destabilized the region. Things are worse than they were before, and we should not have gone there to start with. And there was no weapons of mass destruction, and we got engaged in another senseless war. Third time. Now, once you get burned once, and you get burned twice, turn to somebody and say, you ought to have enough sense not to get burned a third time. Now we have the same situation. We have the same situation. We have the same situation. And if we are not careful, this is a defining moment when we are about to make the same mistake that we made in Vietnam, that we made in Iraq, and we cannot sit back and let individuals lead us into war another time. We know how this movie will end. Reverend Sharpton has stated it. Boys coming back in body bags. Mothers mourning over their children. Diplomacy is always better than war. And if, therefore, it does not work, you still have a chance to do what you need to do. But why not give the agreement an opportunity to work before you try to kill it? I have 7 grandkids. 5 are boys. And I thought about this, Reverend Al, driving over here. And I thought to myself, the least I can do is make sure that what somebody did for me by the name of Dr. King, what somebody did for me by the name of Reverend Dr. Al Sharpton in standing up to this nonsense, the least I can do is stand up and voice a major objection to anybody not agreeing, and let's go forward, let's have this deal, and let's make sure we don't go into another war. God bless you. Thank you.
Dr. David Jefferson. When you study great preachers in American history, and I'm not even saying great black preachers, I'm talking about great preachers across the board. They will range from talking about people like Fosdick all the way to preachers like C.L. Franklin and our idiot. But it doesn't matter how they analyze preaching. This man will be in the history books of one of the great preachers that America produced. Yes, sir. He came out of a Pentecostal tradition, but was of such excellence that denominations of all ilks wanted to hear his words. And he became the first man of color to pastor the Riverside Church, the historic church in New York, which has been the epicenter of American Protestantism all over the world. He thought it not robbery to be here this morning to lend his voice and the gravitas of his presence to address this issue. The pastor emeritus of Riverside Church, a giant in American theology, Reverend Dr. James Ford.
Thank you, Reverend Al, for that warm introduction. And I want to say how glad I am to have the privilege to be in the House of Justice today. I wish the whole world was a house of justice. I want to say about Reverend Dr. Al Sharpton, you know, quickly, he is a man who is appointed, but before he was appointed, he was already anointed. And as we see him represent us across the nation in issues of justice and peace and equality, we are now convinced that anybody who has any sense will acknowledge that he is called, commissioned, and preconditioned for whatever the situation is. And I'm grateful. Now, I have only a brief period of time to say something about this issue in regards to this deal concerning Iran. And so I know that at the House of Justice and at National Action Network, you have the ears of the nation. So if I may, I just want to give a message, because I hope as we are discussing whether we're going to go to war or whether we're going to trust the democratic as well as a diplomatic approach, that we are listening, and what we really want to know, is there any word from the Lord? Yeah. So here is just a very quick message that I want to give to the United States of America, whether you're Democratic or Republican or independent or whatever. Listen, this message. It is said that near the end of Dr. King's speech on August 28, 1963, Mahalia Jackson shouted out, "Tell them about the dream. Martin, tell them about the dream." Well, today I want to address the citizens of the United States, and I think what I'm going to be asking is, I want you all to listen up so that the prophetic tradition of Israel can tell you about a table, and it's relevant to this situation. First of all, America, you are the most powerful nation in the world. But you must understand that power has many different dimensions. Power can be military, economic, ideological, political, not only nationally, but internationally. And therefore, when you are powerful, you have a responsibility when you have a crisis to decide which aspect of your power should take the lead. In some cases, it may be military. In some cases, it may be economic. In some cases, it may be ideological. In other cases, it may be politically. But if you are powerful, you cannot be allowed to function out of simple arithmetic. Even algebra may not be enough. Trigonometry might not do it. Geometry might not. If you're going to be a powerful nation, you got to know calculus. Multiple elements have to be looked at before you take. If you are a powerful nation, you can't just come out swinging. You got to decide with which edge of your power you lead. You must do a cost-benefit analysis assessment of the various options before you, and you have to calculate what are the limits of the effectiveness of either one of the forms of the power you get ready to try to use. You need to see how far down the line you need to look, immediate consequences or long-term results. Having said that, a great nation has to become an expert in risk management. The question is, do you risk war or do you risk diplomacy? Both of them involve risk because you can't tell the outcome. You got to decide, if you're a powerful nation, at this particular point in history, which one you want to use. And the reason it's so important, this is a life and death situation we're looking at now, because we really are in some real trouble. Black folks are really concerned about open season against our black youth. And we are resolved to stop being out there for target practice for any young rookie cop that wants to take us down. Also, it's not just black folks that got an attitude. White people that have for many years swum in the ocean of white privilege have heard that that water is contaminated. And they are not so sure they can keep on swimming in that water. And they don't know whether, if they're not in the water, how can they live in the air? And so there is post and pre-traumatic stress disorder. With the election of Obama as our president, those people got scared. Things gonna be different. How we gonna manage it? We don't have white privilege all the time. A whole lot, let me tell you folks, a whole lot of folks are nervous. I mean, on the edge of psychosis. And this may be why everybody is against anything that's proposed by the president. They're scared that the white supremacist ideology may be exposed if he does well. So there's a whole conspiracy against anything that he does that might lead to a positive assessment of his legacy, including even the treaty in Iran. Even if it kills our children, let's block it. Even if it destroys our economy, let's block it. Even if it causes us egg on our face with respect to the other nationals that are party to this ban that we are talking about here, let's block it. Because we got this addiction, the anti-Obama addiction. Anyway, to make a long story short to America, there is a tradition in Israel that needs to be spoken about. And I thought I heard the Spirit saying, tell them about the table. You say, which table? You don't know about the table? The prophetic tradition of Israel has to lift that voice in Israel and in the United States. There is a prophetic tradition about a table with which I'm going to close what I got to say. For you see, in 2 Kings chapter 6, verses 8 through 23, there is a story about a time when there was a king of Aram, which is another word for Syria, who was going out to do battle against Israel. And the thing happened that every time the king of Aram decided where he was going to have an ambush, there was a word that got out telling the king where the ambush was going to be, and therefore the battle was averted. The king of Syria said, what's going on? Somebody in here is leaking these military secrets. How is this? No, said, no, sir, there is a prophet called Elisha, that what you say in your bedchamber, he already gets it from higher up and tells the folks, and therefore the battle is averted. He said, well, where is he? He said, well, go and find him. And they went to look for him. They said, he's in Dothan. So overnight, the king of Aram sent into the area of Dothan horses and chariots and a great army and ringed the whole area. They were going to get him. You know what happened? Early the next morning, Elisha's attendant, his apprentice, got up and saw all of these horses and chariots around. And he decided, he was so scared. He said, my master, what can we do? And Elijah, out of the prophetic tradition of Israel, stood up and said, don't be scared, man. They that are with us are more than they that are with them. And then the Lord says, open the young man's eyes. You got to have some opening of eyes in the United States of America. You're going to have some opening of eyes, of Democratic eyes, Republican eyes, independent eyes. You got to have some opening of eyes. Because when they opened eyes, he saw the chariots of fire ringing around. Then this is what happened, and then I'm through. As a result of this, the king, Elijah said, Lord, strike these armies of Arameans with blindness. They got them blind. Then Elijah says, this is not what you want to go. You want to go here, you want to go here, and led them into the middle of Samaria, where the king of Israel was headquartered. When they got him in Samaria, then Elijah said, Lord, open their eyes, please. And Lord, open their eyes. And the king quickly said, so these are his enemies in his hands. He said, shall I kill them? Shall I kill them? And Elisha said, no, don't kill them. You didn't catch them with your instruments of war. He said, they tell you what to do. He said, what? Tell you what to do. Said, give them some food and some water and sit them down. That seemed real weird. And it does seem weird to have table talk. They sat down at the table. I guess they talked about their kids and found out that both of them have kids. They talked about their work. They talked about their hopes. They talked about their dreams. They must have been Pentecostal because they may not even spoke the same language, but they somehow do it. Do you know what happened? At that table. That word table is associated with diplomacy. At the table. War was averted And the text says, and so they no longer engaged in the war in that area. Now let me close by saying this. The fascinating thing about the story, and I've been telling that story a long time, the thing I noticed is that in that story, nobody was killed. The Arameans weren't killed. People of Israel were not killed. The whole story goes, not one murder, not one death. Apparently, it's not clear. Is it that the Lord loved one side versus the other? No. The Lord is sick and tired of this killing. The Lord is so sick and tired of the killing. The killing in Iran, the killing in the Middle East, the killing in the United States, the killing in Ferguson, the killing in church. The Lord is so sick and tired of this killing that it's quite likely that this miracle story, so people don't even believe in miracles, but if the Lord is sick and tired of this killing, maybe the Lord will visit the democratic and the diplomatic table with some miracle working that at least for a time stops this killing. I want America just to pause the night and just pray, Lord, we know these stories in the Bible. They don't seem like they really are altogether worth building your State Department policy on. But if you got any more of that miracle power, grant some of it to get this bill passed so we can stop some of this killing.
Dr. James Ford. Dr. James Ford. When I felt that we must call on our churches and unite around this call, and again, you that are listening in Radio Land, have your pastors announce tomorrow. You that are watching live stream all over the country, have your pastors announce tomorrow that everyone should call or email their senator or congressman to vote yes. When the Senate takes the vote after Labor Day, we're going to take hundreds of clergy to Washington and have a prayer vigil outside. It's time for the Christian right to meet the right Christians. We're going to be there. And one who is championed all over the world, whether it was South Africa or Haiti or Cuba or right here in Mill Basin or Bensonhurst, who has credibility in international activism as in our activism here. I bring now him, our elder statesman of civil rights in this country, Bishop of the House of the Lord Pentecostal Churches, Reverend Herbert Dawson.
Thank you very much. I must say to you that I'm overwhelmed this morning, being here with such eminent clergy that I've known for so many years. I followed Dr. James Forbes many years ago when Black Power hit. I was in a clergy meeting with his father, and these ministers, we were trying to figure out what to do with Black Power, and they asked me to prepare a paper on Black Power and Pentecostal power. So I remember preparing this paper, Black Power, Holy Ghost power, complementary or contradictory. I didn't know too much about what I was saying, but the bishops, you know, was kind of shaking, except one bishop, and that was Bishop Forbes' father. And he came to me after, he said, son, you got something there. You publish that, I'll pay for it. And so to be here with Bishop Forbes, Jr. is indeed overwhelming. But beyond that, Reverend Sharpton, you know, as he said, I'm glad to know We talk just about every morning because it's rare to find a friendship that have lasted over 50 years. Yeah, I mean, I say to people, it irritates me sometimes when people seem to suggest that he just arrived on the scene, or he just shows up at this event and the other event. Over 50 years, he's been doing what he's doing now. And Dr. Forbes has indicated that he's anointed. I mean, listen, when you start preaching at 4, you know, man didn't call you to do that. And so always I treasure the friendship that we have beyond the activity. And the older you get, the more you treasure friendship. And so I thank you for your friendship, and also I'm just so proud of you, as I say every morning. And when Reverend Jefferson mentioned all these walls, one thing about being old, I was back there then. I was at the Riverside Church last time I saw Dr. King, April 4th, 1967, when he came to Riverside Church to deliver his Vietnam speech where I opposed the war. I was there. And of course, in the Iraq War, I opposed the war, the first father, and led the delegation, final last delegation to Iraq to meet with Hussein and Aziz, his deputy minister, to avert war. So I believe with Churchill that jaw is better than war. Well, I support the president's position when the president says this is the best deal we could get, and in the absence of this deal, a war looms. Well, I believe that, and I believe saying yes to the agreement. I'm glad, by the way, too, to be with the Rough Rider, Reverend Richardson. Anytime there's an issue, you can rest assured that Reverend Richardson and I are going to show up. So I believe that the agreement, by the agreement, it ends the declaration of war via economic sanctions. What we must understand is that war is waging. Economic sanction is a declaration of war. So you end war when you declare an economic boycott. Number 2, it allows Iran to develop whatever material that it has for social improvement. You've heard Dr. Forbes mention sitting at the table. When a people are absent of food and medical service, it breeds the possibility of war. Number 3, I believe the greatest possibility for peace and goodwill can be developed as Iran and coalition members interact constructively. Number 4, in rejecting the deal, in all likelihood, Iran will resume its quest for nuclear development, which forces the USA and its allies to react in dramatic ways. Thus, we are back to accepting the deal or going to war militarily or economically. Now, what do the opposition say? Well, the opposition say, Iraq, we could get a better deal. There seemed to me to be a profound naivete in that assumption. Who says Iraq want to come back to the table once you have rejected the deal? The likelihood is that they would intensify whatever opposition they have to the USA, and in all likelihood would support any effort to support the foes of the USA. And coalition members, who knows whether the coalition members will come back to the table. They too may feel hurt and rejected, and in fact may make their own deal. And then thirdly, Iran cannot be trusted. Well, listen, in the nations of the world, whoever stopped negotiations or the quest for peace because nations engage in rhetoric, you and I both know that nations talk one thing publicly and while they're engaged in what is called diplomatic dialogue privately. D, they say Iran has declared the destruction of Israel. Well, you know, they make words, but indeed, conversation goes on, as was in the case with Nixon and Vietnam and other instances where heads of state are saying one thing and then dealing at another level. No, change is inevitable. It has been said nations have no eternal friends and no eternal interests, no eternal friends, no eternal enemies, but indeed eternal interests. In other words, enemies who were friends, enemies yesterday become friends today. There's a change always going on. So we're back again to saying Do we want war, the possibility of war, or do we want peace? Well, I'm for peace. And we are to all call all of our senators, representatives, and urge them to vote in favor of peace. Well, the Bible says, blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. I want the record to reflect that I'm for peace. Yeah, I want the record to reflect that I want peace and that I was opposed to war. And I know that you feel as I do. So this is a very critical moment, especially for our young people. Well, you get my age, I'm 85 now. So you get my age, I ain't gonna be around much longer anyway, but I'm concerned about you young people. Yeah, I'm concerned about my children and my grandchildren, and you ought to be about them too. So let us stand, all of my friends across the clergy world, on your Sabbath, let us urge our people to get up and get out and call your senators, representatives, and tell them to support the president, and let's have peace, and therefore be called the children of God. Thank you.
Bishop Herbert Johnson. Let us hear while we are still on the air from Reverend Dr. Cheryl Anthony, Women of Faith, Change Judah International Ministries. Give a hand, Reverend Anthony.
Thank you so much, Reverend Sharpton, and I thank God for you, and our roots go, we come from the same tree, from the Church of God in Christ, and so I want to make an appeal on this morning to those who are local across this nation. I take this personal. It's personal for me. I have a granddaughter who's 19 years old, and she wants to go to law school, but she knows that trying to get the money together to go to law school is a challenge. And so she met with the family, and she said to her mother, I want to go to law school, but I don't know how we're going to pay for it. She said, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to enlist in the National Guard. And so this January, she enlisted in the National Guard. And then she went to South Carolina to basic training and graduated. And now she's on a military base in Virginia. And so when I think about war, I think about my granddaughter. I think about the girls and young people who are in her platoon, who are thinking that they're gonna come out of the military and do great things for this country. But I also know that if there's war, she's gonna be the first to go. I want to tell mothers and grandmothers and grandfathers, those of you like me who have seeded into your children, to be able to tell them that they can have whatever they want, believing on God and working hard. But we've got to know that if there is a war, our babies are going to be the first to go. So I need you to stand up and defend them and defend this country and stand with the president. I want to say this morning that some deal is better than no deal.
Give a hand. Reverend Dr. Cheryl Anthony. Reverend Stephen Bodley with us saying he don't want to say anything, but he's here in New Jersey. Let me say this, you've heard from great and historic and renowned preachers. And I hope all of you in Radio Land and you that are watching live stream will make sure this is the beginning of a real church pushback and do what is necessary to bring about peace. I was in Charleston, South Carolina, right after the killing of 9 people in Mother Emanuel Church. And I went down because Reverend Pinckney, who was the pastor killed, had stood with us just 2 months before that, when we had gone down around the police shooting of Scott in that town of North Charleston. And I stayed at what was called, Reverend Forbes, the Charleston Place Hotel. And a man stopped me in the lobby and he said, Reverend Al, can I talk to you a minute? I said, sure. He said, you don't understand, as you're fighting to bring down the Confederate flag, and I remember you had raised that when you ran for president, this is not just race, It is our history. And my grandfather was this, and my grandfather was that, and my great-grandfather. And he went down of the lineage of who he was. What occurred to me was as he sat there, he did not look like a man of any achievement. He did not look like a man of any accomplishment. In fact, he was on his way to the bar in the hotel. And he was just a beer-drinking, regular guy down south. But what gave him his pride is he identified with the lineage he came from. When you know your lineage and your pedigree, it will affirm you even if in your own time you didn't achieve much. You came from what you perceive as a line of greatness. There are others that will give the military record of what they came from. I wanted us to be here to make it clear we do not come from the lineage of great warriors and battlers. That is not who we are. We do not come from a lineage of great wealth. I can't sit with the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds and talk about how we come from a lineage of those that were great landowners and negotiators of wealth. But I do have lineage. I have a spiritual lineage. I come from the crowd that broke up walls and stopped military industrial complex. We come from a family that brought people from the back of the bus to the front of the White House. We come from a family that tore down the walls of apartheid and took a man out of prison and made him president. We are a freedom-fighting family. We may not look like much to you, but we stopped wars before. We stopped nuclear weapons before. We come from a powerful family. Let's stand up. Blessed are the peacemakers. Blessed are the peacemakers. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. Everybody sing. Everybody singing. Everybody singing. Everybody singing. Singing like you mean it. Singing like you mean it. Everybody now. Everybody sing. Everybody singing. Yeah. I'm opening the doors of the movement. There may be someone here today. You listen to us on the broadcast. You watch our television show, but you never became a member, an active member of National Action Network. We have about 27 active divisions here, fighting violence, fighting crime, fighting police misconduct, racial profiling. In fact, we have new members orientation right after the rally today that I'm going to kick off. If you're here and want to be a member of National Action Network, no better day to join than right now. Just come right down either aisle. I don't care if you have membership dues with you or not. Come and let me sign you up to be a member of National Action Network. Come on, everybody singing.